The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good evening, everyone, from the Temple of Silence here in Luoma, Finland. And Tui is up in the Little Bear Meditation Center, so we are communicating in that way. We have here the Libra pre-full moon preparation for the exact moment of the full moon, which happens early in the morning in terms of universal time, 2:52 and 18 seconds GMT, and I think I have that in the chat box. So that's early Tuesday morning, and our broadcast for the exact moment of the full moon will occur beginning at 1:30 a.m. GMT. Meanwhile, we have, well, it's been really going since Aries, but now that it's Libra, we're offering the sacred pentagram 5-day full moon approach, and you can tune in on that by using our standard YouTube link, which you all should have by now, and that starts at 6 p.m. GMT. We've already had one today, one tomorrow. On the day of the full moon, 25th, we'll simply have the full moon, and then following, we will work on the 26th and the 27th in the same day, and they will be broadcasts. Well, you know, the Tibetan has said that Libra is a very interesting, well, notable sign, because in a way there's nothing notable about it. Of course, it is a powerful sign, and even though it's the balance between the two extremes and the union of the polarities, it is closely connected with the will. Actually, all three aspects of divinity is the triple sign. It used to be the claws of the scorpion. All three aspects, the law, sex, and money aspect 1, 2, and 3, they are all there. And it's very much connected with the science of triangles. It is one of the triangular constellations, and interestingly, interestingly, so is Capricorn. Both of them are bringing through the third ray. Well, that connects it with the atmic plane. And that is the plane of spiritual will. It's, I remember I used to know the sort of last living disciple of that early group of disciples that was under the instruction of Master DK. And this lady, RSW, those were her initials in the book. She said, well, the Tibetan, he has the triangles very close to his heart. And Libra is a very important sign in his chart, she said. Now, you know, we can take that with a grain of salt. We know he has a powerful Gemini, of course, and from the images of him, it looks like Taurus is pretty strong as well. But Libra, the spiritual will, the triangles, you know, DK has said, this is a project, triangles, close to my heart, and it must go on. Also, we know that Libra governs the royal road into Shambhala, and that's the Shushumna channel of the threefold Kundalini channel. So although in some ways it's hard to find something outstanding and extreme about Libra, it does have a very powerful position if you examine it closely. Very connected with the third ray of creative intelligence. That's the name that DK likes to apply to that ray, but also to the second ray, and that will be emerging more and more, because it rules all manner of unions, and it rules the peace process. And we know the Christ, the great second ray head of the spiritual hierarchy, is the Prince of Peace and related to the Spirit of Peace. And another name for the Spirit of Peace, you know, who one day, maybe even now it's happening, is surrounding the Christ, along with the avatar of synthesis and the Buddha. He's called the Spirit of Equilibrium. Now there's Libra again. And we learn again that Libra is becoming more and more powerful in the planetary horoscope. As a matter of fact, we'll do a little reading from what Francis has provided, and we'll see that even at the end of the last century, DK said that Libra would be growing stronger, as along with the second ray soul of the planet itself. So just think, if Libra has at this time emphasizing in a more visible way the third ray and the second ray, then it emphasizes the personality ray and the soul ray of our planet. And interestingly, of course, one day that first ray monad of our planet will be emerging, but not yet. And then Libra can also have its rule balancing the three major aspects of divinity. So really, it's a very powerful sign. And we, disciples in training, we have to learn the factor of harmlessness. Now, harmlessness, perfect poise, Libra, a completed point of view, Libra, and divine understanding. So the whole factor of doing unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule, is extremely Libran. And we find out that so much about right human relations, which is the theme of Shambhala at this time as regards humanity, comes under Libra again. So maybe it's a sign in which nothing extreme stands out, although you can ask Librans whether there are extremes as the scales tip wildly, you know. It is very, very important, including that whole question about having your heart weighed against a feather in the Egyptian mysteries. So, you know, it might balance the feather, but the feather actually has to be heavier than your heart at one point for you to move on and out of the reincarnational cycle. So it's got a lot of fascinating interest in this sign. The Joffre painting is very interesting. It mixes the left and right and left. We have the sun and we have the moon. We have the great pairs of opposites in the infinity sign. Now, maybe it got turned around, I'm not sure. You would think, well, the sun has to be on the right and the moon on the left, and yet the representative of the sun in the golden robe is found here on the right, and Thoth, who represents the third ray and the more material aspect and the intelligence aspect, is on the left. And there's the feather and there's the heart. And, you know, all of us are, well, you know, the old expression about with a heavy heart. One does this with a heavy heart. And there's sorrow and there's sadness, and there's the residues of karma, all those issues. And our purification has to lighten our heart. In fact, bring light and love into the heart center. And then maybe one day at the fourth initiation, sometime in the future, we have the time equation in our own hands. Our heart will be, in a way, lighter than a feather. You kind of see the yin yang come together here, and very interesting that yin yang was major in the philosophy of Taoism and China. Now, China has the Libra as its personality sign, and Taurus as its soul sign. And we also have some Assyrian or Chaldean images here, but we're always mixing the male and the female and the male. Libra rules androgyny in a spiritual sense, because when we look at the planetary logos, uh, uh, although he's in a masculine incarnation at this time, we are told there is that union of the male and female. He is the divine hermaphrodite, Hermes Aphrodite, with Hermes standing for the male and Aphrodite, Venus, standing for the female. So always the magnetic union between the opposites and drawing them closer and closer together under what's called the law of magnetic impulse, the second law of the soul. Interestingly, again, the numerical resonance of the number 2 with the second ray, also esoterically called the law of polar union. And you look at that, people who are in Masonry will recognize that checkerboard square on the bottom of the image, and that's pretty well life as we know it, with the pairs of opposites standing in stark contrast to each other. But somehow Libra has to unite these and create various marriages. The marriage in the heavens is one big union. That is the union of the soul and personality, and later it's going to be the union of the monad and the soul-infused personality. There's always a new marriage with a higher aspect of divinity on the horizon. So, can we live the balanced life? Can we live the life of harmlessness? A much more difficult discipline than one can imagine, because then you have to know the consequences of what you think and what you say and what you do. And so few of us, we say, think, and do things, but we cannot necessarily trace the causative chain from those acts of ours. We have to know the consequences of what we do, and then we can master the law of karma, which ultimately is a Syrian law. So, really, although there's nothing outstanding about this sign, it's so very, very interesting. I'm just simply going to recommend that you go to the MoriaFederation.com, and you will see Francis Donald's illustrations, and you will see. Let's see if I can find them. Yeah, here is the person walking with perfect balance. She's carrying the male symbol of the Dorja, which itself is very Libran, because it's kind of like it's an 8. It's a union of the male and female with the central point. It's like the developed Ajna center, which is the center of choice and has so much to do with Libra. And then the female symbol is the bell. So it's like first ray and second ray, the bell of manifestation. The bell which allows matter to precipitate according to the spiritual impulse. And if you really look at this picture, I don't know how many of us would like to do what she's doing, but there is the razor edge path. And we have Venus shining above the mountain, hierarchically ruling in Capricorn, but one of the major rulers in Libra, it's right up there. So the poise aspect is so important. And, it's connected also with the 7th ray, because it is the 7th sign by numerical resonance. And the Libra person, 7th ray person, knows how to say the right thing at the right time to preserve the harmony and to preserve the beauty. And that's a major, major factor with Libra. Let's see, and the other one was Athena. Well, some of you are into astrology, and you know that Athena arose from the head of Jupiter, or Zeus, when he had a terrible headache, and he called his blacksmith Hephaestus or Vulcan to help solve this, and the blacksmith hit him on the head, and split his head, and out came Athena. Well, Athena is interesting because it has whereas Venus, it looks a lot like Venus, but whereas Venus has the circle of perfection, Athena has the diamond shape, and it's very pointy, and it has some of the masculine characteristics. And she too is really walking on the noble middle path, and it really is a razor edge path. Behind her is Uranus, and we know the stories of Uranus and the birth of Athena when Saturn, also in a way the son of Uranus, castrated Uranus, and Athena was born out of the foam in the sea. And there's a lot of depth to that particular story. The pentagram is there, the 5 pointed things. Tui was pointing out earlier today in the sacred pentagram approach to the full moon that there is a 5-fold flower formed by the relationship of Venus to the sun and to the earth, and it's just beautiful how it unfolds. And I think the rose also has that kind of thing. So Venus is very associated with the 5th ray, and so is Libra. The rulers of Libra, you know, are Venus in the exoteric mode, Uranus esoteric, and Saturn. It's the most powerful position for Saturn because it's not only the hierarchical ruler there, it's also the planet exalted. And Saturn refers back to a golden age when all things were in balance. Well, on our planet at the moment, a lot of things are out of balance, but we're trying to bring forward Libra to draw forth the second ray soul in our planetary horoscope and our planetary ray chart, and that will do a lot to solve the great difficulties that we are having at the moment, which are difficulties of imbalance. Now, you might think that Libra, being the central sign in a way, is related to the 4th ray, and in certain ways it is, because he tells us that both of them will bring about harmony. And we know maybe we can get the idea that Venus gets stronger and stronger in the planetary horoscope with the idea that the 4th ray by the year 2025 comes in great power, DK tells us, in its monadic aspect. Are there 4th ray monads? There are. Not the ultimate. Ultimate is 1, 2, 3, but there are 4th ray monads. We have to see whether we are being visited by such as they are to help restore the harmony, the balance, and above all, the right human relations. Well, you know, there's a lot that can be said about this, and I'm just going to recommend that you go to Moria Federation at gmail.com, and every month what Francis has written about these signs and the planets associated will appear there. You know, there's so much here that you just read it and study it. You know, he does quote a little bit at the bottom from DK about the sign, and he says in Libra, the first real vision of the path appears. Well, you can see that these characters, the lady who's walking the tightrope and the Athena arising out of the head of Zeus, or Venus, Athena is arising out of the head of Jupiter too. It depends on whether we use the Roman or the Greek version, but it's the same. And this is where you make the decision to begin to tread the path of return. You reverse the wheel and start going back in the direction of the soul. Life of soul and form is balanced. This is what DK says. Neither dominates, and that can be a problem. It's not like Scorpio where the soul really takes over, or in bad cases, the dweller takes over. Neither dominates. Equilibrium, an interlude wherein the soul organizes itself for battle in Scorpio, right? And the personality waits. So this is the probationary path, and duality is known. And we're familiar with the words, I choose the way, which leads between the two great lines of force. And there might be one more here. Let's see if there's anything else along the line of, yeah, and this is the text, and down at the bottom, it's called the place of judgment. Here in Libra, the die is cast. That's very interesting. It separates the sheep, Aries, from the goats, Capricorn. Now we're talking about how powerful it will be some millions of years ahead at the judgment day, when it will be decided who remains with the earth and who goes to other places for further education because their concrete mind is overdeveloped or not developed enough. So anyway, the sheep and the goats, they're good sheep too, but the goats are the initiates. Capricorn eventually will yield to Aries, and both are great signs of initiation, but right now it's Capricorn. And the sheep are ruled by Mars, and that may be the place where they are going to learn about harmony that Libra would normally teach. So this is all about the reversing the wheel, and Libra is always involved in turning the other way, turning towards the soul after having lived for a very long time, developing and activating the personality. But you know, it reaches that balance point, and then some higher of the pairs of opposites comes in and says, I want to tread another way. I repent, I turn back, I prepare to move towards the soul. Here's where he says the end of the century will see the influence of Libra rising as it rules the transition between Pisces, the Piscean and Aquarian age. Think about that. Libra, trying to bring all of these forces into equilibrium, and they are fighting like mad at the present time, brings these forces, Piscean and Aries, Aquarius, into greater equilibrium so that we can accept the best of Pisces as we move into the Aquarian age. And he says the same thing about the fourth ray. He says, so no dangerous break will occur. The best values of the past transported into the present. Well, just go there and read what Francis has to say. He did a lot of research. Now he's working, as you know, on The Secret Doctrine, a monthly presentation. It's going to go on a long time. It's a big book, and he presents it in a very fine way with, as you would imagine, excellent illustrations, and tries to make that great book, which Madame Blavatsky said, which Alice Beatty said, has a content like no other book. He's trying to make it comprehensible, and I'm sure the students of his webinar find that it is more comprehensible to them. Okay, those are the thoughts that we will have in mind as we get into our work on the meditation for Libra. Now, of course, we're already building towards that. This is, you might say, this is a day of aspiration, followed tomorrow by a day of dedication, and within 12 hours before the full moon, we end into the safeguarding and holding mode. Receiving, safeguarding, holding. We know that DK told his students that he would be aware of their group meditation before the full moon, within the 12 hours before the full moon. So that takes us, I guess, to the, well, it depends on where you live, but let's just say the GMT time for the full moon is 2:52. So 2:50, and that's in the morning, so 2:52 in the afternoon on the day before, which is even the 24th. It's in a way it's tomorrow. We remain open to the possibility that approaching as a group, our efforts are seen, recognized, and furthered. And then we get into the possibility of distributing the energy. How do we do it? In our thoughts, in our words, in our deeds. We know that we are immersed in the Libran energy, and we try to find the occasion to use it in a wise way as we go through our normal activities in life. All right. Now, we will begin. We know there is an observer on many levels, and to extend our consciousness, our soul consciousness, into the personality is one level of the attitude of the observer, which leads eventually to the position of being the monad, which means being. But to begin with, we are the soul in incarnation, and we withdraw our identification from the body. It's as if we're behind and within that body, but not the body. It's a coming to oneself, divorced from that usual thing where we think the person is the body in front of us. And we withdraw our identification from our emotional sentient states of liking and disliking and desiring and not desiring. We pull back. It's a big thing to disidentify from one's desires and normal feelings. And we view the concrete mind with all of its thoughts and thought processes, its reasoning, its logic, its thinking, its associations, all those things. And we pretty much are saying to ourselves, I have a lower mind, but I am not that lower mind. And then come to yourself again. What are you then? Well, you are a unit of consciousness. You are being, everything is being. You are being consciousness. And if we were to let the personality sort of dissolve away before our inner eye, we would find ourselves in the world of love and light and sacrificial power. We'd be as if within the light and power, color, sound demonstration of the egoic lotus. But then again, we should not really identify as the egoic lotus. It is an instrument for what we really are. But a much higher type of energy is there demonstrated. And when we find ourselves as if within the causal body. We use our imagination to do this. As if within the egoic lotus, we recognize some group kinship with many others on the soul level. So try to feel that, especially under the law of magnetic impulse and the law of polar union. It's so Libran, it's all about union with others on a soul level. So it's no easy thing when you meet somebody, you talk to somebody, for you, for I, to be a soul and relate to them in a way that is beyond the obvious. We have to discount the obvious person and achieve a soul attunement with whomever we may be speaking, dialoguing, and that's really very subtle. And I wonder how many of us ever think about that, to discount the obvious and go deeper so that it's soul communicating with soul. That would be a real aspect of the higher marriage. So try that, these days of Libra. And when you relate to people, pause for a moment and don't just react to the person before you, but see if you can discern the soul. Now that's the word, discern. And the first soul level power is spiritual discernment. And I think it's going to be a humbling realization that so often we deal as a personality with another personality. Well, we identify in soul. Use your imagination with all the men and women of goodwill all over the world. It's like someone may be living 10,000 miles away, but you're closer to that person than you are to certain people that are just in the room with you, because you can reach in soul that individual far away, and you can't yet do that with the people who are not on the path, not interested, just casual acquaintances, etc. So we support all the efforts of all the men and women of goodwill working through the 7 ashrams and in specialized manner through the 10 specialized groups, the so-called seed groups. We support their work. Because as is demonstrated in the labor of Hercules having to do with Libra, it's all about the test of friendship. And it has been said that hierarchy is friendship in its truest sense. And in soul, there are people who are serving even more deeply and more consistently and more powerfully, and we call them the new group of world servers. And here and there they are found. The real members of that group, DK seems to hint, have taken the second initiation. So, we're either on our way to becoming a full-fledged member of that invisible subjective group, or maybe we are, in fact, a well-established member. Anyway, DK tells us that service is really difficult, the real thing, because it involves so much sacrifice of time and interest. And then we look at all of humanity, as if, whether in the body or out of the body, we can relate to them as one, as if all the many are one. And I recommend, sitting down with this little mantra until we get it. Some days we may get it, some days not. Naught is but me. So and that's the state of contemplation, and that's ruled by Libra too. And so after we succeed a little bit in realizing that no one is but me, directing this towards self-conscious human beings and maybe beyond, we have to apply it more broadly. There's nothing in any kingdom, whether mineral, vegetable, animal, that escapes that word naught. Everything I perceive in contemplation, of which the highest state is samadhi, is, well, you would say is I, but it almost sounds better to say is me. So we have to learn how to contemplate. The third phase, the Libran phase of meditation. And again, linking the high and the low, Libra ruling bridges. There's a connection that we imagine between the emotional vehicle and its higher correspondence, the intuitive Buddhic realm. So that if the aspiration is high enough, if the arrow of aspiration is shot in the right way and the right direction, it can return as the arrow of intuition. And that bridge of light with all the 7 colors, we're building that, and that is the connection. Now, that bridge has to pass through a a ring pass knot of retained energies on the fourth subplane of the mental plane. So let's get those energies. We gather them from below, our vitality, and we bring that up to the mental plane just the way we do when we do the glamour meditation. We lift the lower personality up imaginatively to the mental plane. And now he tells us, draw upon the soul. So we imagine the energies of the knowledge, love, and sacrifice petals drawn in to that mental pool of energies on the plane of mind, knowledge, soul love, sacrificial will, the sense of oneness that comes from the synthesis petals, even if they're not unfolded yet. And finally, we draw upon the jewel in the lotus that represents the monad, and we bring some of its controlling energies into that pool of retained energies on the mental plane. That's the real synthesis. And there they are, those energies. And our multicolored bridge passes through them. We visualize that. Linking the excuse me, emotional and intuitive planes and passing through this collection of retained energies in the area of the mental unit. So a multicolored bridge, but the color of our soul ray and our personality ray stand out in this multicolored bridge. And yet, for the purposes of the group, we'll simply use overall the color indigo, the second ray color, as the major color of the bridge. Each color has its quality, and you may feel that. And we're going to shoot a beam of light, blazing white light, across the bridge from the power accumulated in the retained energies. We'll use projection, shooting into the monastic permanent atom and beyond, towards the intuition, towards the spiritual will. We can't say that we reach it yet, but our shaft of light will go in that direction. You know, this is all simply a visualization. And we will say internally, I see the greatest light. The word of power for the second ray, even as we outwardly sound the Om on a second ray note, the G. So inwardly, I see the greatest light. outwardly the Om. And if we do this with enough spiritual intensity, we will touch something of the world in which the masters habitually live, that is the spiritual triad. And we will, as a group, be able to receive some kind of impression, light, love, will, something. We really must build that bridge. I've just given you, the Antakarana technique in a simplified manner. Now we're going to join the consciousnesses of the certain members of the hierarchy of whom we are a little aware in our salutations. It's as if we declare our cooperation with these great beings whose consciousness is ordinarily focused in the world into which we are projecting. So we offer our gratitude to the masters of whom we are a little aware, and to the head of the hierarchy, who is very definitely upon this planet, as are all the masters. Sometimes we have to assert that fact to ourselves, so we remember we're not just dealing with words or abstractions. There are real entities here. Salutations to the Christ, the master of all masters, the teacher alike of angels and of men. Salutations to the triangle of masters with whom we most closely work in this Bailey work. The Master Moria, the Master KH, and the Master DK. Salutations to the Master Moria, the head of all esoteric schools and organizations. He strengthens all disciples. Salutations to the Master Kutumi, who is the coming bodhisattva of the age of Capricorn, and now whose ashram is mostly responsible for preparing for the reappearance of the Christ, his brother, Lord Maitreya. Salutations to the Master Jwal Kul, who has given us the blue books and whose ashram trains students for discipleship and for the first three initiations. Salutations to your own master, as you know him to be or conceive him to be. Salutations to the spiritual hierarchy of our planet. And all of these salutations are part of our pledged discipleship. There's no, worship involved here. We're declaring our intent to cooperate. Now, as a group, and using the creative imagination, let us raise our thought somehow to Shambhala, the center where the will of God is known, and with deepest reverence and all humility attempt together, identified as a group soul, to attune ourselves with the presence of the Lord of the world, Sanat Kumara. And internally and silently, we'll sound a long inner Om as we imagine the group imbued with some tiny portion of his energy, which is the energy of will and purpose. And so we will have a group which more deeply understands divine purpose, however slightly, and the formulated plan, which is to carry out that purpose at this time, and the role the group can play, and the tiny role that we as individuals can play. Our purpose now is to come in touch with the energies which are particularly available now as we approach the Libra full moon. Probably should call it the Libra full sun festival, and you know why. But one of the meditations Master DK gave is to meet him in the indigo disc. So we imagine a golden pathway leading towards and into that indigo disc, which stands for the esoteric nature of our soul ray on this planet, and even of the solar logos, his second ray soul. And we condense ourselves not as personalities, but as like a point of light, love, and sacrificial will. We're all together in consciousness, really occupying no space at all. We are being consciousness, and it's as if we hover above the golden pathway. And this pathway becomes shorter and shorter as it is retracted into the indigo disc, and we travel with it. Shorter and shorter until this golden pathway disappears into the indigo disc. We are there. We pause for a moment, realizing that in this disc, maybe we can become outposts of the consciousness of Master DK. What does it mean to be an outpost of the Master's consciousness? Somehow his consciousness, or some small portion of it, is pervading our consciousness, just the way the solar angel, its consciousness pervades the consciousness of the monad in extension in the causal body. Consciousness is like mercury, it fuses. And he is, as we know, a profound expert in the matter of energies, planetary, zodiacal, universal, and the energies of the creative hierarchies. So maybe we can absorb more if we are somehow pervaded by his consciousness. So just imagine that. And we begin our journey We're first going to come in touch with Venus, Uranus, and Saturn. Notice all of them on the hard line. 5, 7, 3. We'll have, if we succeed, the Venusian emergence of soul values, blending redemptively with the personality, according to its aspiration, according to its needs. We'll have Uranus, and we'll be able to touch the deeper purpose that the archetypes convey. And the touch of Saturn, well, it's so prominent in our lives so often, but it's a very high planet. And we'll learn how to deal with karma in a just and true way and supersede the karmas that we have set in motion and liberate ourselves into new worlds of perception and activity. So we will then first, as it were, I mean, we're not going to Venus. Even a master has to be at a very high stage to leave the planet and travel to another planet. That's not within our range, and those people who say it is are simply dealing with some kind of astral reflection of that later possibility. But we can visualize Venus. It's very turbulent on the outer plane, very hot, very turbulent, very dangerous. But it does inwardly rule Libra and is very connected with those lives that are here with us now. And we need to establish a closer rapport with them, the solar angels. So we feel with Venus the presence of our own solar angel, drawing us as a personality ever closer to the energies of the soul, so that a divine marriage, a total infusion of the personality by the soul can take place. We're in the process of entering into this marriage in the heavens, and Libra again, the sign of marriage, of polar union, the marriage of the poles. And we feel ourselves being drawn into the radiant beauty of the soul. The personality is drawn into the radiant beauty of the soul. And we need this so much in our groups and our individual life. We'll use a kind of fifth ray note, an A. We'll sound an Om and watch that process occur, and also for our groups, the infusion process, the marriage process. We'll imaginatively watch that occur. Oh. So the group soul can infuse the group personality. There's that kind of greater marriage too, and one day the soul of humanity and the personality of humanity will be merged in the same way under the auspices of Venus. It would be a different life if those higher energies were the energies we were always dealing with right here in our personality life. So it's very much an orange planet, you know, the fifth ray color and the basic color of the solar angels. And DK is asking us to feel ourselves daily pervaded by the orange light and as if bathing in the sea of the light orange light. But now we think in the direction of Uranus. It's kind of a interesting turquoise planet, you know, blue-green. Has a lot of similarity to the Earth, our blue-green planet, and is the only other planet that we know of that has the first ray monad just the way Earth does. Now this is maybe the most powerful planet, but more in the next solar system than this one. And there are archetypes created by the mind of God, the planetary logos, in meditation, even before the denser levels of the planet were formed. Archetypes are perfect relationships. And that's when we follow Uranus. That's what we create down here. Ever more beautiful relationships that reflect those archetypes. And we have to be very creative to take the conditions as they are now and recreate those conditions so that they reflect the archetype and not just some glamour, some illusion. Conditioned relationships must be recreated to reflect archetypal relationships. And then all will be better. And there will be a transformation of our planet. And in the area of human relations and authenticity, where the real archetype of every individual meets with the archetype of the other when that is appropriate. And there's no pretending to be this or that. So we're going to use the note B, a violet note, a seventh ray note, and we will sound the Om, watching ourselves and watching our groups reflect a higher order of relationships, which reflect the archetypes of purpose over which Uranus holds sway.
A whole new order of relationships between human beings based upon who they really are and not who they are pretending to be or desiring to be under some glamour or illusion. So Uranus is very important then in creating right human relations, and we begin to see why it can be part of a great second race stream, as is demonstrated in esoteric astrology, because these archetypes are found on the monadic or second level, and they are part of the purpose, which is a second aspect of the will, purpose, intention. So we can transform under Libra and Uranus our human relations until they become right human relations. Finally, we take into our inner sight the ringed planet Saturn. Of course, Uranus has rings too. It's just that Saturn's are more prominent and it's a planet closer to us. It's the boundary. And we need Chiron to make that bridge to Uranus, from Saturn to Uranus. Saturn, Chiron, Uranus. But there is a law. There is a divine plan. There is karma. You know that Libra is the legislating sign. It makes laws, hopefully in line with the archetype. And Saturn, through the law of karma, enforces those laws. So when we're out of alignment with the law, we are punished in various ways until we get it right. Saturn, the friend of all disciples, ruling the spiritual will and really the entire cosmic physical plane. There is a great equilibrium in process, and that equilibrium will be able to adjust intelligently to divine law until the spiritual triad and the divine plan really come into our lives under Saturn. So there's low Saturn and high Saturn depending on the form that receives it, and we want a clear mind. We want a firm will reflecting the purpose. We want the ultimate archetype of the etheric physical plane cosmically considered. That's Saturn.
So we'll sound it on the green note, which must learn to blend with the indigo note. That green note is F, the Fa, Do, Re, Mi, Fa, Sol. It's really spelled out correctly. But now we'll watch the ability to live a just life, a balanced life according to divine law, according to spiritual will, and the discipline to do it. Until we overcome our karma, at this stage, there's always karma, you know, but at least human karma, and are liberated into the next higher level. But Saturn guards the door. No release until we have fulfilled the law. So spiritual will and law flowing into our lives and our group's lives. We really become law-abiding citizens of the planet and of the solar system. And this we do gratefully, upholding the plan and the purpose through the discipline of Saturn. As disciples, we welcome Saturn into our life. And then the balance will be maintained. So individually and in our groups, we have to make these improvements using the different planetary potencies. And of course, they lead us to the great solar logos, so active at every full moon, the God of love and wisdom. And we're all really monadically, we have our home at this time in the sun. So the planets are great and necessary, but the solar logos runs his solar system, and we are a tiny part of that. We're all burning up in this consuming fire of love. Our God is a consuming fire. That's our solar logos is, the fire of love, and we will be purified by the law of karma under Sirius, under Saturn, under the Lapika Lords, under the four Maharajas, until we really are exponents, whatever our ray may be, of the love of the solar logos. So as we sound the Om on the second ray note, we think that God is love. So on this second ray planet, we're on our way toward the realization that God is love and that we are all being consumed in the consuming fire of love, wisdom. And it is inevitable, even though at times when you look out at what's happening, it seems very distant. Now, still remembering that we are supported by the consciousness of Master DK, we raise our thought to Libra, the light that moves to rest. This is the light that oscillates until a point of balance is achieved. It is the light which is distinguished by moving up and down between the higher of the pairs of opposites and the lower. Light that moves to rest, always, though continually, the central point ascends. The whole system of the pairs of opposites is always moving upward and being balanced by Libra. We should these days be getting the feeling of the Libran energy. Probably you're going to notice it. It's different from Virgo. All these energies can be used to bring about harmony and right relations and justice. Justice is very much before the eye of the world, especially those in the United States at this time. True justice, ultimately based upon intelligence, love and wisdom, and the law. Fair play for every monad, because all monads were created equal. Not all personalities, obviously. Now there in the sky, you know, the Libran energy, the Libran constellation. And we'll be building that up over the next well, this is the night of the 23rd, and the morning of the 25th is the actual full moon. So we'll be meditating on this. I choose the way which leads between the two great lines of force. It's the way of the soul, isn't it? The soul looking towards the monad, the soul looking towards the personality at the same time, and making it possible that a bridge should exist. I tread the way of consciousness, at least in this solar system. I tread the way of the soul. And I consciously and deliberately choose to do so. If I tread only the way of matter, I'll be buried without the air, buried alive, suffocated. If I choose only the way of spirit, I'll disappear and have no vehicle through which to redeem the lower worlds. I choose the way which leads between the two great lines of force, valuing both reconciling both. So let's build on this, and we'll have some silence as we ponder on the meaning of this mantra in our lives, in our groups, in humanity as a whole at this time. I choose the way which leads between the two great lines of force. And what would our lives be like if we could tread that way? And if humanity could tread that noble middle path. How would things be? And we can see that this mantra keeps us always in the middle, no matter what our elevation or point of tension may be. It keeps humanity from going to extremes. It bridges between opposites and contrary forces. It really helps to hold all things together in a dynamic, loving, wise equilibrium, which reflects the relations that are supposed to exist on the archetypal level. And it's a conscious choice. I don't drift here, I don't drift there. I have choices. I stand in the middle. It's just like the rules for magic in the 7th and 8th rule. You have to set your form upon the proper path. There's a choice to be made. I choose the way which leads between the two great lines of force, and that choice is made in the desert. After the baptism, Jesus wandered into the desert to confront his lower nature and make the choice always for that attitude which overcame or could overcome the world, 3rd ray, the flesh, 2nd ray, and the devil, 1st ray. We make choices all the time. But are we aware of how often we do and what they lead to? So to be aware of choice and its implications now being dramatically played out before the psyche of the world, but obvious in our own lives as well. This is the key consideration. I choose the way which leads between the two great lines of force. We all exist within the body of a great unknown God, a supercosmic logos that we call the one about whom naught may be said. And there are many of them, but we live within one which is related to Libra at the hub of the wheel. And the whole zodiac is the heart and the head center of that great being. We can't imagine what that would mean. And then the energy goes farther into certain constellations. Libra, we learn, he held this information back at first. It's related to the second path, which works on the cosmic astral plane. It's related to the fourth path, to Sirius. It's related to the Ajna center and the sacral center. But let's just say if the little bear is the Ajna center, then Libra is related to that and stimulates that constellation. It eventually reaches our solar logos and his greater system. It has to pass through cosmically the 7 solar systems, of which ours is one, and then resides in the heart center, the sun, our sun, the balance. We've seen the winged heart, the balanced heart, and into Venus and into Uranus and into Saturn, finally reaching the Earth, Shambhala, which, let us remember, is the only center of perfect peace on our planet. Libra again. And then affecting our monad, holding the balance, our soul holding the balance, and our chakra system, especially, let us say, Ajna, the heart to a degree, and the sacral center definitely. Those energies descend. They are real energies. They have to be transformed and reduced on the way down, but they are here. So let us think about peace and all that's going on in the world, which indicates war, conflict everywhere. So let us choose to send the Libran energy into some trouble spot in the world. You can choose whatever you like. We'll use 3 ohms to help correct the problem. And we'll use the creative imagination to do that. Every lord of a constellation has also 3 rays, major rays, and I'm going to assume that the second ray is important beyond the third ray that we hear so much about with Libra. So choose your trouble spot and send in these energies of equilibrium, harmony, peace, adjustment, right relations. Before we do the great invocation to close, be reminded that Tuesday morning at 2:52:18 a.m., very early GMT, we have the exact moment. And during the time that remains, let's try to contribute to fairness, rightness, justice, right human relations, and the important decisions that are being made in the coming days and hours. According to our decisions, we have to live with them, you know. Karma is pretty much the action we've taken in our decisions, and they become facts, and they have to be lived with and lived through. So let's help subjectively the best we can in all momentous decisions which determine whether we live, humanity lives more and more as a soul, or whether we revert to the old limited personality ways. So do join us at 6 o'clock GMT on the 24th, which is looks like it's today. At least it's today here. And I think, yeah, it will be in the United States, but not in Australia, New Zealand. We'll do that sacred pentagram approach to the full moon, and then early in the morning on Tuesday, GMT at 1:30, leading up to 2:52, we'll have our full moon program, exact moment of the full moon, which meditation to you will be leading. Thank you for being here, friends, and all I have to do is find our great invocation, which is always available in the Bailey books, right up here. And let's say that, followed by the Ohms, and I thank you for attending and working together to prepare the way for the right access to the Libran energies and their right expression. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Oh. Thank you. And we'll see you on the 24th and 25th. Thank you for helping to prepare the way for the exact moment of the full moon. Many blessings, lots of love, and forward we go.